Hello, this is John from caveofprogramming.com, and in the last tutorial actually I said that we would look at scripting HTML in JSPs in this tutorial, but I'm going to defer that for the next tutorial because I've realised that was going to be a lot more interesting if we first look at how to get parameters from the URL. So I'm going to show you how to do that in this tutorial. Now you probably noticed, or you may know already, that if you go to a URL, often at the end of the kind of main bit of the URL, you'll see a question mark, and then there can be a list of parameters that will look something like this. You could have, for example, ID equals 6, and then if there's going to be another parameter, there'll be a and sign like this, and you can say name, or like user equals Bob, and so on, and you can have as many like and separated bits as you like, and session equals, you often see some cryptic parameter like this. So you can have parameters like that in the URL, and they are a very useful mechanism for passing data into your servlets or your JSPs, or even PHP pages, or pages rendered using some other technology. It's just a kind of standard way of passing in data. So we're going to look now at how to get those parameters, and I'm going to start by showing you how to do it for a servlet. So I'm going to create a new, I'm going to just right click my project here and go to new servlet, and let's just put that, let's just call it URL parameters. So I'm just making up a name here with no rhyme or reason, and I'm just going to put this arbitrarily in a package called GUI, since I've already got one from the last tutorial, and just click next, and this is all fine, so click finish, and let's go to this servlet here, and we've already looked a little bit at the doGet method, and the doGet method is what's invoked when you go to a URL, and we're going to look at the doPost in due course, but I'll leave that for the moment. And here I'm going to make use of this request object, because the request object contains a load of information about the nature of the request that was made to the servlet. So when you go to a URL in a browser, you're requesting a page, and that's what this has to do with. So let's say here string, let's say we've got a parameter called user, which is as good as any, and again I'm just completely making this up. I'm going to say user equals request.get parameter, and let's call the parameter user as well as the variable named there, and let's just spit this back out. So I should really output HTML here, but I'll just like output some text just so you can see it working. Let's say let's get a writer here. I'll say print writer out equals response, and response has to do with stuff that you're going to send back normally. So let's say response dot get writer like this. Let's just take a quick look at the methods there. So there's a lot of useful stuff here, like add cookie and all this kind of thing. We're going to take a look at some more of these in the future, but for the moment I'm just going to say get writer, and then let's say, actually I'll add the input there with Control-Shift-O in Eclipse, and in spite of what I just said, actually I'm now feeling like a little uncomfortable about showing you something that's wrong in a tutorial, so I will actually just put that HTML tags in there, even though you might as well know, for the purposes of just testing things, it will work perfectly well if you just output text. So let's say out.println, and I'm going to say the user parameter is, and let's just use the plus there and say user. So that's this variable here that I'm filling in using request.getParameter. Well, I'm pointing it at the string returned by this technically. So now if I run this, just click yes to save it, and here we go. So it says it's null because at the moment there isn't such a parameter, so the string's going to be null. But if I put a question mark here and say user equals John, there we go. Now it's actually got the information from the URL. Let's have another one. Let's say string ID equals request.get parameter ID. And so if you know Java well, you'll realize these don't have to match. I'm just making a name of the variable match the parameter because why not? And let's just display this here. So let's just say the ID parameter is ID. And if you wanted this to be a integer, you'd have to use I think integer has a parse method, or it's called try parse or something, or maybe there's both, but you'd have to parse it to an integer, I guess. So but anyway, let's just have a look. So if I run this now, in fact I'll open a console at the bottom, and let's just run this and click finish, and when it starts up, so now so it's saying this is all coming out on one line. This didn't put any HTML break tag in or anything, but I can say like question mark, and the order is not important at all. I can say ID equals 8. There we go, we've got 8, and let's say and user equals John, for example. And if you want to have a look at the source code, I'm just gonna that's going to be available for downloading from kvogprogramming.com or from the udemy.com probably. But let's just paste that in as a comment to my where are we? So I'll go to this class that I've just created, and I'm just going to paste that in here so you can see what's going on. Okay, so that's pretty simple, and you can do the same thing with a JSP page. So let's create a new JSP here, and it's going to be exactly the same, so I'm not going to dwell on it too much, but I'll just call it parameters.jsp, and just click finish here. And now when a JSP is compiled to a servlet, it's going to have some instance variables, and you can actually add more yourself, and we'll look at that in the future. But one of them is the actually no, I'm talking rubbish here, sorry. Yeah, actually that is true, but it's irrelevant here, because the code that we write here, if I put some stuff between these scriptlet tags now, this is going to be compiled into basically a do-get or a do-post method, and so of course we'll have available the same stuff we've got here. We'll have the request and response object, and we do also have directly a out variable, which come to think of it, I wasn't talking rubbish, because this, I guess, is an instance variable of the servlet that this JSP page will be compiled to. I guess that's how it works. So let's just do the same as we did before, basically. So I'll say string, let's call this name equals, and I'll say request dot get parameter, and let's just get the parameter name like this. And I'm just going to do here, so we've already got this out thing predefined, which I never really thought about it, to be honest with you, but I suppose it is an instance variable. And I'm just going to say out.println name param is, and let's just output name there. So this is basically exactly the same as for servlet, except that we've already got this out thing here. And if I run that now, yeah, that should look good. Let's run this. Click finish. And I'm just going to supply a name parameter here. So let's say name equals Bob for a change. There we go. So and there you go, there's the output from the JSP. So let's just put a comment in here as an example. And by the way, just a really little thing, but if you're not too familiar with HTML, here my servlet was outputting everything on one page, but you could use, for example, a print, and then you could use like a break tag. So let's say bruh, and because I'm not going to close the tag with another tag pair like I did for the HTML, if you use this syntax, if you putting a slash here, it means that this is a kind of self-contained tag, and you don't need an opening and a closing tag separately. So if I run that, I'll get my 2 lines. Just check that I've put a semicolon on here. Now I'll get that output on 2 separate lines because there's a line break between them. So it's just going to look like this. Okay, that's it for this tutorial, and in the next tutorial, as promised, we're going to look at scripting your HTML using Java. So join me again then, and until next time, happy coding.